It's Monday morning, time for Bring It In Troops, little Zoom from Quarantine show. Tom Haberstroh is here. I will tell you, on Tom Haberstroh days, our preparation is 50x. Like, we could do so many shows right now. David, do you feel like we have enough topics for today?
It depends on how long legals allows us to go. If we're stuck on an hour, I think we're going to be just about right. We'll be bulging a little bit.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Legal decided to leave the chat. We're going to go 3 hours today. Yay.
Everyone else does.
Judy has a fantastic sense of humor, except on this topic. She has like no humor.
Well, I do think that my days, Mondays, also follow the weekend.
It's true.
So there's lots of stuff to catch up on, but man, a lot of news in the NBA.
My thought was basically like, it is hard to run an NBA team. And never harder than right now, where we just had a bunch of big injuries and the trade deadline is Thursday. And like, are you supposed to make a deal to goose your prospects in the standings, or are you supposed to stand pat? It's legit hard. Like, it's like, what do you do if you're in the Lakers right now? LeBron James is out for weeks. Anthony Davis has been out for weeks, and you're at some risk of losing playoff positioning. It's a tough one.
You try to find some sort of magical potion that gets them ready back sooner and healthily back sooner. Because I think that's the big problem here is before LeBron James got hurt, you could say, all right, they're not going to rush back Anthony Davis because they got LeBron James. Like, LeBron James can hold down the fort. They won't drop in the standings, and they can take their time with Anthony Davis. But now that LeBron is out, it creates problems in both directions that I think LeBron's going to get antsy to come back because chances are the Lakers are going to win a whole bunch of games. And as we know, he's super competitive. He flew with the team to Phoenix instead of going home to get treatment because he wanted to be with the team. You're telling me this guy is not going to try as much as he can to get back as soon as possible, even if, hey, the doctors say, hey, we could use another week or two here, LeBron. This doesn't sound like to me a guy who's going to take extra caution coming back from his injury.
I'm going to read this little Frank Vogel. Well, this is Dave McMenamin's article. It says that, and Vogel pointed out that some time off for a 36-year-old guy, that's old for an NBA player, playing his 18th season, that's a lot of seasons, that started just 71 days after his 17th season ended, might not be a bad thing for James. We're encouraging him to take a mental break and recharge a little bit mentally so that when he comes back, we're into a stretch where we can make a playoff push and make some noise, obviously, going into the playoffs. What struck me was on this show, Christy Oshman taught us that stress is stress. Like, if you're really coping with any, you could be a fight with your spouse. It could be a death in the family. It could be anything. The way you experience it with the hormones, blah, 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 is similar to, if you're out overworking, right? So LeBron with injuries he's worrying about and rehabbing and the standings, like, this is not a recharging dude, right? This is not it's unlikely he would come back from this ankle injury on your proposed schedule of pushing. Like, he's not going to come back stronger.
Coach, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
I just stopped doubting LeBron a long time ago because I kept picking against the Cavaliers and they kept winning. He is pretty amazing. Your argument obviously is based on sound logic and reasoning, except that it's LeBron. I look at it from a different point of view. What Tom is saying, what can the Lakers do, right? What is their move now, right? How do you get Kuzma playing better? How do you get Schroeder doing more when they just have been stuck in a role? What can you do offensively? Maybe bring out Gasol a little bit more. Who can they add? I think they'll probably add some old tired brand name that isn't going to be quite what it used to be, but is a name everyone knows instead of trying to
LaMarcus Aldridge, something like that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Instead of like, hey, who's the next Lou Dort? Who's a small forward that can really play, that really hasn't got a chance. And we know the downside is the same as everyone else, but might have more upside. But they're just not a franchise that'll likely do that. And Chris Paul ultimately make the decision. Not Chris Paul. Rich Paul will make the decision probably anyway, right? LeBron's going to make that call.
So one thing that you have to keep in mind is we haven't seen LeBron James get hurt seriously hurt during a competitive season for him, for trying to win a championship. We talk about the groin injury from 2 years ago with a really not a good Lakers team.
Right.
And as David, you pointed out, like, Brandon Ingram was going to get really, really good eventually. But at that time, it wasn't a team that was going to win a championship. So the question is now.
You think he tanked his groin?
Yes.
No, I think after they didn't get Davis, because I think they were trying to get Davis
right,
and then compete. And when that didn't happen, he was done.
Yeah. And so we haven't seen the longest that LeBron James has been out during a season in which his team was not like in the tank or whatever. It's like 8 games. He missed 8 games in the 2015 season, 2014-15 season. If you remember, it was December, first year in Cleveland.
Went to
And
Miami.
LeBron James was in Miami,
Yeah.
getting rehab for his back and various ailments. And I remember
Right.
at the time, I got a text from someone who was saying, like, I just saw LeBron's trainer in Miami, like in Coral Gables. And I was like, what is LeBron's trainer doing in Miami? Oh, is LeBron in Miami? And sure enough, LeBron was just, getting treatment in Miami. David Griffin was the president of basketball operations for Cleveland at the time and said, yeah, this is totally normal. Like, LeBron is getting treatment for his back. That was 8 games. Okay. Jeff Stotts from InStreetClothes.com, who I cite regularly. He's probably the guy on injury tracking information. Jeff Stotts says the average missed time for a high ankle sprain like LeBron James has is 10 games. It's a wide variance. Klay Thompson missed 0 games in the playoffs after having a high ankle sprain. So it could be 1 game or it could be like 20 games. We don't know, but the average is 10 games. LeBron James hasn't missed 10 games consecutively in his career. And you also have to keep in mind, this condensed schedule means that if he missed a time span of 18 days, in any normal year, that might be, 8 games or so.
Right.
This year, that's like a whole bunch of games. So LeBron James, not just having to come back in a condensed, compacted season, if he does come back soon, and there's a lot of issues there playing on back-to-back nights, etc. But also if he misses 4 weeks, that's like 15 games. So that's big. That's big news. And I think when you don't have LeBron, a lot of things change. In that quote, in that story, Henry, you talk about Frank Vogel and what Dennis Schroeder needs to do and the rest of the team. One quote struck me was Frank Vogel saying, I think these guys would like to prove that they can play. And I'm like, man, imagine being like an 8-year veteran in the NBA and feeling like LeBron's injured. And now I can show the world what I can do. And, the problem is teams without LeBron James are basically playing 300 ball without LeBron James. So these guys might think they can play, but the track record shows that teams playing without LeBron James, because he does so much for them on both ends of the floor, they've really struggled. That might change when Anthony Davis comes back, and this Lakers team might be different. But the track record shows non-LeBron or teams playing without LeBron just cannot play basketball.
Can someone look up that's listening now how many playoff teams the Lakers play in that stretch? That'd be interesting. I haven't looked up yet.
Oh, they do. They play some pretty good teams.
Yeah.
That's the West. Not easy to find easy scheduling in the West.
This is part of me is like, this could be a total silver lining. This could be, so of course, because he's LeBron,
yeah,
he'll be back way faster than we think, right? Anthony Davis will be back any day, right? He'll be back soon. We don't know when. His injury's a little scary, but he's due back soon. And maybe, David, you made me think, like, if they've really figured out how to use Kyle Kuzma, and he's kind of alive, maybe this is, maybe the standings effect is not that big of a deal, and maybe Kyle Kuzma's better than he was ever going to be.
Well, let's look at that, because my feeling on the standings aspect is, I mean, just go back a year ago. They were a 1 seed playing a play-in, winning 8 seed Portland, lost game 1. And going into the tournament, going into that event, a lot of people thought, I wasn't one of them, we got ourselves a battle here because Portland was so hot. And then they win the game 1. I wasn't so impressed, but it was fair to understand why people were. It was Damian Lillard in Portland. My point is, there's no easy seeds anywhere you're going to play, right? And besides your family, I'm not sure there'll be any fans anywhere really. So this might be the year where if you aren't the 1 or 2 or 3 seed, it'll be less impactful than any other year, in part because they're all about saying, like, who's going to be the 8 seed here? That's going to be, they're not getting 1 seed anyway, but even if they were, who is the 8 seed this year likely going to be? None of those teams are easy to beat. This isn't the East.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking at, if you look at the standings, Portland, I'm going to probably put them in that top chunk of teams that should be a playoff lock. The problem this year is 7, 8, 9, and 10 are in a play-in tournament. So 7 and 8 will play against each other. The winner of that game will move into the playoffs. The loser of that 7-8 game will play the winner of the 8 or 9-10 game. And so the 9-10 game, whoever wins that will play the loser of the 7-8, and then we'll see who gets that final spot. Right now, I think you can pencil in Utah Jazz, okay? Utah Jazz, the Clippers, Phoenix, Denver, Portland. That's 5 teams. And then you want to get that 6th spot. That 6th spot is going to be so big this year because you get in the playoffs, right? So who's going to get that 6th spot? Is it the Lakers or is it someone like Dallas? And I think Dallas is the most interesting team in the league right now because they can swing a deal at the deadline. They have a presumptive favorite before the season, Luka Doncic, transformative, transcendent player who's really, really good right now, playing amazing basketball.
Killing it.
You have Kristaps Porzingis.
Sorry.
This guy. Porzingis, who's healthy, he's back and playing well. So. Now, do you make a deal for another big man? Do you push LeBron James into that play-in game? And if they play the 8th seed and they lose, and then they play another team and they lose, LeBron James could be out of the playoffs this year. So this is super interesting because whatever happens in the next 4 days could have a lot of impact what happens in the next 4 months.
David, if I'm hearing what you're saying, though, like you're basically saying that, I mean, a play-in game, it could be the Spurs, could be Dallas, could be Golden State, I guess. Those teams are good enough, I guess, that you're saying like that you don't risk it, right? Like you don't want to show up and just have to win.
Well, I love how Tom put it because who wants to get into a coin flip?
Yeah.
Right. To go on. The NCAA tournament is a coin flip tournament.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why it's so exciting. There's other reasons we can talk about later. The Lakers do not want to be in a coin flip tournament. In a COVID year where you can get contact traced back to your home, meaning you got to stay home because your barber had someone come in a day before, you don't want to take any chances. So yeah, you've got to stay in the top. I hadn't thought about it. I didn't even know how they were doing it. I hadn't even thought about it. I'm not smart enough to think that far ahead. But
that's something I never really considered, Coach, is the fact that in a COVID season, like that coin flip game becomes even more of a coin flip if Anthony Davis, decided to go to the grocery store earlier that day and took an Uber without his mask.
Virginia may have lost anyway in their first round of the NCAA tournament, but it didn't help that they had been kicked out of the ACC tournament and then arrived just barely the day before the game. Now, I realize most college kids are used to that, but not in the tournament. They're not. They must have been there a week. There's an advantage there. Who knows what happens and what practice is like because of potential COVID issues. So, you're right. You got to be in the top 6 or you're really rolling the dice in a way that the Lakers do not want to do with LeBron and AD.
Do you mind clicking? There's a basketball reference link with playoff projections. So it just as a little fun game. I just looked at so the Lakers are projected to finish about 46 wins, which will be 3rd in the West. If you scroll to the Western Conference here, okay, so 45.5. So the Pelicans are the missing the play-in line. So it seems like don't have to worry about that, right? They're going to win more than 33 games. But this 36, 37, 38 win zone is play-in zone, right? And that's where I don't think you could get cocky if you're the Lakers. I feel like it's 50% or more they're going to not fall into that, but you got to sweat it a little.
I mean, look at this. In his entire career, LeBron James, when he doesn't play, his teams are 34-70. 34-70. So they lose basically 70% of their games. So, and this is with D Wade, this is with Chris Bosh, this is with Kyrie Irving, this is with Kevin Love. So you can't just say, oh, these teams are terrible. Of course, when you take LeBron off the floor, they can't win basketball games. These are some pretty talented teams. Over the last 3 years, Lakers 11-22. The Cavs years 4-23. Remember, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love were in a bunch of those games, and they could not win consistently without LeBron. Miami Heat, they were 9-9 without LeBron James when he was with the Miami Heat. So put that in perspective for the next 15 games. If the Lakers go 5-10 over the next 15 games, the Dallas Mavericks could be ahead of them in the standings if they go 11-4. And boom, the Lakers, I mean, assuming the top 5 teams stay where they are, the Lakers could be in that 7th spot in a month. So
I'm going to cut you off, Tom, but I want to double down on your point from a fan perspective. If indeed what you're saying and everything you're saying sounds very smart to me, and they do fall down, imagine LeBron and AD. They're like, these playing games are like game sevens. Last year, I actually was traveling that day where I think Damian played Ja. Is that right? Was it Memphis, Portland in the playing game last year?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So great. Those are two pretty big stars, but LeBron and AD in a playing game, it's like a game seven. That'd be pretty damn exciting. It's not great for Lakers and Laker fans, but I mean, it could very well happen.
I'm not a doctor, but I would just point out that Achilles tendinosis is the Anthony Davis's primary problem. He also has a calf strain, I guess. But tendinosis, I have had tendinosis I had it for years, and it is not the same as rotting from the inside out, but it's not far. It's degradation. It's not a strain or a stress. It's degradation. Like the inside of your tendon is like degrading, and it needs to reverse itself, and it can. Usually it's some kind of movement pattern thing, but my point is like it either starts healing and does, or it doesn't, right? You can just keep it for years. Part of me is like this Anthony Davis like hanging around thing when it's tendinosis, where it's like, the inside of his tendon is like not robust. I was like, oh, that's a lingering, that's a thing that can really linger. Just in the back of my head.
And that Henry is a great point, because you're making the assumption, I've read it in a few pieces this morning. You're making the assumption that, hey, LeBron James and Anthony Davis are going to be 100% for the playoffs. Yeah. They'll be fine. Yeah. And you're sitting here being like, remember when John Wall had those ankle issues or those Achilles issues, and then he ruptured his Achilles a couple weeks later. You remember DeMarcus Cousins coming back from his Achilles tear, and it wasn't the Achilles that was giving him issues. He tore his quad muscle coming back from that. Kevin Durant had a calf strain and then came back from that and then tore his Achilles. So it's not necessarily the actual Achilles that I'm worried about with Anthony Davis. It's also the breakdowns of the other muscles or tendons or bones in the kinetic chain that you're overloading or underloading because you're trying to come back from that injury. So imagine if Anthony Davis, the team is in a spiral. They've lost 9 straight games without LeBron James. And you're like, man, like, I think I can suit up now. And then he goes out there when his other leg is not ready, or it's over ready and it's just overtaxed because it's just overcompensating for the other weakened leg. You could see how this is not a lock that both LeBron James and Anthony Davis are going to be healthy come playoff time, because of the fact that you're having to ramp up in the middle of a season in which they're playing every other day and sometimes more than that.
And CJ McCollum, his podcast was on hiatus, but it was back, and he was out. He had a foot injury. He was out for months, and just came back and was terrible for a couple games, and then got back. But after, he explained that like he couldn't work out. I think he said something like he's played 5-on-5 in practice maybe 0 times or 1 time because of COVID restrictions and lack of practices. But he played, and I think I remember saying he played his first game having only played 1-on-1 against like CJ Ellaby and other like bench players. Like, just because there isn't a moment that you're allowed to be, 5-on-5 in practice and everyone's available for that. So this is hard if you're, Anthony Davis. And also Marcus Elliott would probably say that if we knew everything about somebody with an injury like Anthony Davis is, probably it's been caused by his hip or his back or his neck or something, right? And like, who knows if those movement patterns have been straightened out.
This goes to Tom. I want to get your opinion because I talked to Henry this morning about this. I feel like this is the year where more teams can feel like, you know what, we do one more deal and we can take this thing. More so that you couldn't do it during the Warriors year, except for Houston, right? Last year, it seemed like it was going to be an LA team, right? Or Milwaukee. This year, because of all these things going on, like there's just so many teams that really have a chance. Do you agree? Like, and my point on that is this could be a very, very busy next 4 days. I normally don't feel that way. How do you feel?
Oh, totally. And Greg in the chat made a great point about Daryl Morey pushing all your chips in. When you have a 5% chance at winning a championship, you got to go all in and basically expand that championship window as much as you can and strike while the iron's hot. I think Philly is a great example of this, Coach, where you look at a team like Philly, where they have a new head coach in Doc Rivers. You have Joel Embiid, who's out for, a week or more with this knee injury. And you have Kyle Lowry, who's on a sinking ship there in Toronto, or Tampa, I guess we should say, and losing the last billion games.
11 in a row, 8 in a row. They lost 8 in a row, I think.
Does Daryl Morey look at the situation and see the Lakers are beat up? The Milwaukee Bucks are good and they're playing much better, but we're at the top of the standings here and we have home court advantage potentially throughout the playoffs. And just look at the Utah Jazz. Are you scared of the Utah Jazz after what Joel Embiid did to Rudy Gobert? I don't think so. And so he might look at this and say, Kyle Lowry, come on down. They have picks. They have young talent that they can trade to Toronto or Tampa. And this is, I think, one of those deals that could really tip the scales for a championship contender. If you get Kyle Lowry and that championship pedigree on that team, I think it's a great fit. Of course, other teams can make moves at the deadline. Like, do the Boston Celtics make a big trade at the deadline to move themselves into that top tier of the Eastern Conference? Who's available? I don't know. But I could see with Utah faltering here, with the Clippers trying to find a point guard, and with the Lakers just really beat up right now, I could definitely see a team in that second tier, Denver, Portland, try to make a move now because the window is open.
Yeah, I asked you guys before we went on that when I read this morning, you guys posted that Aaron Gordon wants to trade. And I don't know why I thought of this because it could be really stupid. It's not like I follow these teams that closely, but I thought, boy, Dallas could use one more really good player to go with right now the best player in the league. Just it's a week, so it's unfair to say Luka's best player in the league. But for this last week, he's been the best player in the league. He is, when he's making his threes, which he's doing better than 40% for whatever number of games in the last 10, he's James Harden. He's that unguardable, and he's just a bigger guy. Aaron Gordon on that team, and you trade a couple of picks and James Johnson, who doesn't play for him. Because my fear is if you add anyone else from the rotation, well, there is a chance you messed up some chemistry that's really working well. Maxi Kleber's playing well. Jalen Brunson's playing fine. Aaron Gordon's shooting 40% from three this year. He is still a great athlete. And now he's never played in really important games after winning the first game of every series they play in round one, and they get smoked. That's my voice. But yeah, to your point, Dallas, Denver, these teams are one more upgrade. Henry loves to say this. If you can replace a player that's playing a lot and not so well with a player that's playing better, it's just going to help your team. It doesn't have to be a superstar, right? Aaron Gordon does that for Dallas.
Well, David, you get very excited about his defense. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, this is going back a year ago, but I thought a year ago, okay, Jonathan Isaac, Aaron Gordon can be a lockdown duo. He's super athletic, but he's also quick and agile in small spaces. He's obviously he's physically very, very blessed, very strong, super athletic when he needs to be defensively. And I think he's probably got the bones of a good defender because his coaches have been good on the defensive side. And his numbers are fine on defense. This is not an all-star. He's just a good player, maybe a very good player, and maybe even better playing with Luka, right? There's going to be more space than he's seen maybe his whole career playing with that guy. So it just made some sense to me that for Orlando can get at least one pick now. It won't be a great pick. Maybe they'll look for a future pick instead, or maybe in 3-4 years Dallas goes down. That's something they can figure out. But sure, plenty of teams could use Aaron Gordon. But Dallas is the one team I thought they've got to be thinking with Luka playing like this now, we got a shot to beat anybody in a 7-game. When you have the best player in any 7-game series, you can win the series. And they do. Luka could be the best player in any series they play.
Greg's talking about Kyle Lowry to Miami for Tyler Hero and Precious Achiuwa. Precious. Let's leave it there. I can't talk. What do you think?
That's too much in a trade for Miami because I just think one of those two young players, I think, for an expiring contract and Kyle Lowry, I think that makes sense. Tyler Hero,
you got to think like a closer. You got to be a winner. You got to go all in. Come on.
Now you sound like you try
that on.
It's not so much that Miami's gonna want to see those guys develop. It's that they could use those players for other deals too. So it's not that they believe in Precious Achiuwa in order to see him be a star in 5 years. It's that, hey, instead of Kyle Lowry, we could throw him into a trade for Aaron Gordon, right? And so I would expect that the Miami Heat are gonna upgrade at this deadline because of all the things we talked about with the door creeping open. They need some more offense. Their offense has been dragging. Zach LaVine, man. Whew.
I would do Hero and Achua and picks and try to get Zach. And the Bulls now have Pat Williams and White and Hero and Precious and the picks. And none of them are barely old enough to rent a car. In fact, none of them are old enough to rent a car without paying extra fees at 25. Pat Williams is 19, right? Kobe's 21, White's 21. That's the deal that I would do. The Bulls will be upset, but they're not a team. I'm doing an article probably this week, Tom, that was Henry's idea a couple years ago of, okay, who's on the bus to win a championship? Well, this is the last couple years ago was a tiny little bus. It's a big bus this year. There's a lot of teams until the deals are done that can do it. Chicago ain't on the bus. They're not on the bus. So why not age back down? They've got talented players, and they're getting a lottery pick this year, especially if they trade Zach LaVine. So that to me is the smartest deal. You put Zach in the Miami culture, I think you'll get the best out of him defensively, which no one's ever done before.
Tyler Hero also from Milwaukee, so you got that whole like regional thing too. So
right, that would be high school. Yeah, he was unfair to watch in high school. All these. Have you ever seen high school tape of Tyler Hero?
No, but he did go to Kentucky, so it probably means he was very good.
Oh my God! Well, yeah, it wasn't like he was playing. You know, my son played plenty of mid-high major talent on opponents. You know, this is a big. Not where Tyler played. There was a bunch of guys, but I mean, they were rugged. I'm sure there was a college player in there, but of course, fans. This is back when you had to wear a mask and you could go to games. Overrated, all those kind of chants, and Hero would just give them bucket after bucket. He was an incredible player. So yeah, you're right. That's very close. Yeah, that'd be. I think it's a no-brainer trade. But what do I?
David, that bus is nervous, right? Like a month ago, Utah was driving the bus, and it was like, oh, like we're very comfortable here. And now it's like, I think Phoenix is 2 games back. We just talked about the Lakers. The Clippers have been iffy. The Bucks were rough, and now, like, is anybody feeling particularly strong right now? Is any team like, oh, we're comfortable with where we are?
I think one team is
Phoenix.
No.
Milwaukee.
Yeah. I think we talked about this, 3 weeks ago. Then Drew got hurt, but all they needed was just actually get serious. And have you ever seen the movie The Gentleman? If you haven't, I pity you, and I'm ordering you to see it. It's Guy Ritchie and Judy. You'll love it too. It's outrageously funny and also just clever and interesting. And it takes place in Britain, Henry. Back to your roots. But there's this great scene where one of the main characters is trying to convince a bunch of like hoodlums to like, give me the phone. And he's being very sweet and offering some money, and they're just arguing. He just says, stop fucking around. And he keeps going. And it's a very, very intense but funny scene. That's what I think Bud did. Like, stop fucking around. Can we start guarding people with a multi-box? And they're doing it now. And now they've added PJ. And I don't know how much they'll get from PJ, but Drew Holiday talked yesterday about just his voice. Like, this is, talk about stop fucking around. And PJ ain't fucking around, except for about his shoes, maybe. He's apparently he loves his sneakers. He is going to get them. He's going to help them defend like they always have. And they've got shooters. Drew Holiday's very good, better than Bledsoe. I think Milwaukee I think they're done now. Now let's just see. I think they got a real shot.
Just put the cake in the oven. Just let it cook.
Yeah, now you got 30 games left.
Wait, are we talking about cakes, buses? I'm really confused.
Oh, we got it all.
Wait, one trade I was interested in now that LaMelo Ball is hurt.
Yes, we should talk about that. Yeah.
LaMelo Ball, it's devastating to see because this fan base in Charlotte has been so excited to watch this guy play for the rest of the season, get into this in the arena and get to cheer this guy on, and now he's hurt. That's a crushing blow to the franchise that just finally got their guy. But now Devontae Graham is going to be their starting point guard.
We're waiting for that. Yeah.
He's going to be up for an extension this summer. His contract is $1.6 million this year. I'm wondering if they feel like LaMelo is the point guard of the future, does Devontae Graham become more valuable to them or less valuable to them? And I think it's probably less valuable. You can put him as an off guard too, but you already have Terry Rozier. And then you have maybe put him on the bench. But do you really want to spend that kind of money on Devontae Graham coming off the bench? I don't think so. I wonder if a team now is going to call the Hornets and be like, look, I know you guys lost LaMelo. You might be thinking more long-term here. Is Devontae Graham going to be your number 2 point guard for the future? Because we could use him right now. The Clippers, I wonder if they're going to call the Hornets about Devontae Graham, a guy that they need a help at the point guard position. And Devontae Graham is 1.6. He's a minimum contract deal. So the whole issue about the Clippers being hard capped and can't really send out a lot in the contract, I think it's interesting if you look at Zubats. The deal would be something like Zubats for Devontae Graham and Biyombo. So you get the backup center for Serge Ibaka. You move Zubats, who's 24 years old. He's a good, solid young player for the Hornets. Then they get Devontae Graham at the point guard position. That's one interesting deal. It doesn't have to be that exact deal, but I think that's really interesting for the Clippers to upgrade at the point guard position and get a playmaker and a guy who can shoot the heck out of the ball. And you don't need him to attack at the rim. You got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George for that. I think Devontae Graham makes a lot of sense for them.
I love it, Tom. And the Hornets get their starting center for LaMelo's next 10 years. I mean, exactly. I love Zubats. I love him. I think he's very good and it's going to continue to get better. Competes his ass off. He's a racer. He's a rim racer. That's exactly what you want to pair with LaMelo. The pick and roller for sure. I love the deal. And they got to trade Devontae somewhere. They should have traded him when they drafted LaMelo, when his stock was even higher. It's going down. He's not had a good year this year.
No. I mean, he can still shoot. It's just he doesn't get to the line, and he's awful at finishing.
He's the next Lou Williams. It's a great trade because he's not Lou Williams yet, but he could be. Like, that's his game.
Or Malik Monk. Malik Monk, who's also on the Charlotte Hornets.
Who's playing better. He's playing better, actually. Right? Malik's playing better.
Tom, is there anything about this year that's different that would lead everyone to get injured?
What kind of question is that?
Well, just like they did, they made a super dense schedule, and now we'll have a weekend where LeBron and LaMelo are joining a long list of people. It's like, oh, this is kind of predictable, right?
Yeah. So there's this double tax that we're seeing with a condensed schedule is not only are teams having to play so many games in not so many days, but also a 2-week absence from LeBron James is going to count twice as much because there's so many more games. So you're going to have more injuries because they're not having rest, sufficient amount of rest in between games. And then it's just going to hurt even more when those guys do miss games. So if you're looking at a team like Boston, who's trying to really get going here in the second half of the season, Kemba Walker might benefit from having 2 weeks off and just getting treatment and trying to get, his knee right, because that's probably above everything else, probably the biggest thing that the Celtics need to do to get going. But this season is just not going to be good for the Kemba Walkers of the world. They're not going to have enough time to just get that rest and get that treatment in off days and try to ramp up in practice time. It's just not going to work for them. So I think when you look at the Celtics, it's another trade that I think is interesting when you're talking about the injuries and trying to get going is Aaron Gordon. We talk about Aaron Gordon with the Dallas Mavericks.
He can only go to one team, Tom.
What if Aaron Gordon?
I'm listening.
Sorry.
What if Aaron Gordon could clone himself?
Or Aaron Gordon.
Now, what were you thinking, Tom? We're here.
So they have a glut at the center position, but they don't really know who's the best player there. I mean, Orlando's going to want a young player and a pick. Okay. Or as reported by The Athletic, 2 first rounders. I don't think they were going to get that for Aaron Gordon. I think if you're the Celtics, you have that trade exception for $28 million, but they're going to be hard capped below that number. So it can't be for the full 20. You can't fit in that contract without sending some salary out. Romeo Langford, who knows if the Magic like that young player.
Robert Williams.
Robert Williams is the name I think is really interesting. If you're the Boston Celtics, it's been so hard to figure out if the Celtics really love this guy or they're just tired of the inconsistency and they're ready to cut bait. And I think if the Orlando Magic want to deal Aaron Gordon, you would have a taker there in Boston for Robert Williams and a first-round pick protected for the lottery. The Celtics have all their picks. They could finally make a mid-season trade that could make them, that much better. and they can fill that fourth position for them has just been absolutely a headache for them.
So you're saying the starting five is Kemba, Brown, Tatum, Gordon, and
Tice. Yeah. Tice. And you have Tristan Thompson. You could throw him in for cap purposes, but essentially you got Tice or Tristan Thompson as the starting five.
Their bench is just not good enough.
You don't believe in Charlotte product Grant Williams as the bench guy?
The next PJ Tucker?
Yeah, he is Mensa level smart. Built
I love him.
He's a really smart young player. And if we're talking about trades, like Devontae Graham to Boston makes some sense, and to try to get some. I mean, Jeff Teague
off the bench, yeah.
Jeff Teague has not been good for them this year, so you could get some.
Where did we hear that before? I got killed early this season, Tom, when I said just what you said just now, but it was a projection. I didn't know for sure. And his fan base, or whoever it was, because he had a couple good games, in December or whatever. Yeah, people can play well once in a while. He's a very talented player, but I never thought that was the answer. The Devontae idea, I love, this is just me, but not just me. I love these six men, like Dennis Schroeder last year for OKC, Lou Williams forever, Jamal Crawford forever. I once thought Zach LaVine, like he was Jamal Crawford. I still don't know exactly where we are with that. I don't know if he's best served being a 30-minute per game, but come off the bench and just freaking score, as opposed to being the man. I don't know. He hasn't helped as the man do anything, but it's not his fault. I don't blame him for the Bulls' issues before. But when you have a guy like that coming off your bench, I just think it does a lot for your team. Jordan Clarkson for Utah, who's going to walk into the Sixth Man of the Year award if he stays healthy. He's a game changer for them because of it.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to see Bradley Beal become suddenly available here in the trade deadline.
What do you think they're thinking?
What's that?
What do you think the Wizards are thinking, Tom?
I think they're going to try to keep Bradley Beal through the deadline and reevaluate at the end of the season. This is a weird season where the Wizards can make the playoffs even if they are just bad. So they'll probably there are a lot of teams there like Chicago, Charlotte, Orlando. These teams in normal years probably would miss the playoffs and they can say, all right, we're sellers. But it's just in this murky area where the Wizards have Bradley Beal, which every team in the league would love to have Bradley Beal. And maybe maybe the whole LeBron James, Anthony Davis thing will result in teams throwing the bag. Like whatever offer they gave for Bradley Beal a month ago is now 2 times X at the deadline. So that's really interesting. But notice who did not talk to reporters after the game last night. I saw Bradley Beal did not speak with reporters after another tough loss last night to the Brooklyn Nets. He's got to be really, really frustrated with the team performance, whether he pulls out that card of a trade demand like Aaron Gordon apparently did. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's certainly much more of a possibility, I think, this week than we thought.
I've been wondering too if maybe Bradley Beal just wants to live in DC for personal reasons, right? I don't know, maybe the schools, maybe I don't know, maybe there's he said some stuff. I'm like, oh, maybe he just doesn't want to go. Maybe this is just fine. In which case, go ahead.
But I think what Tom just said just lit off some fireworks in my brain, because you're exactly right. Tommy Shepard can't lose. I'm just going to sit tight, and if he stays, great. We'll be much better next year. We'll do some things in the offseason, or we can always trade him then. But my phone is going to get red fucking hot right now.
Yeah. With
teams who are desperate because of that big bus, and no one's driving the bus. And Bradley Beal he's the best game changer we think is on the market, by far. No one can, except for maybe Zach LaVine, and Bradley Beal is better. You just wait and just hope someone gets stupid, right?
Well, there was this great article that happened to be on TrueHoop.com about how the teams that were hit by COVID recently, and the Wizards are pretty high on that list of teams that suffered the most due to COVID protocols. Right up there with Boston and Dallas. Go check it out on Friday. Talk to
amazing story. Yeah, here we go.
Dr. Philip Skiba over there in Chicago, who was just talking about how so many high performance athletes are coming into his office and saying, all my measurements are testing out okay, but I feel awful. I'm not getting back to the same conditioning levels. What's wrong with me? And what we're seeing in the NBA is Jason Tatum has come back from his COVID battle 2 months later, is still, I talked to him the other day, still not feeling right. Like he's trending in the right direction, but still 2 months after coming back to the floor, he's still not right. And so you can see how the Bostons of the world, the Washington Wizards of the world look at this season and just say, let's just build for next year. Let's write off this year. This is a crazy year. We've had, like, the Wizards have had their full lineup for what, like 2 games this year. Tommy Shepard might just look at this and say, Brad, this is not our year, but I can promise we are going to be at the top of the conference next year, going into next year, because of Bertans going to be healthy. Russell Westbrook's going to be healthy. And you might convince Bradley Beal that, like, just chill out. We're going to be fine. Just let's revisit this offseason.
That's yeah, could be.
I would just add this to it. If from what I know of this whole thing, it's fair for Tommy to have spoken to Bradley and said, where, if you could go anywhere, give me your list. And I'm promising nothing, but if those teams call, I promise I will do everything I can to make a deal. I'm not going to hurt my franchise going forward, just to accommodate you, but I'm going to accommodate you for sure. And if they don't call, there's nothing I can do. I'm not shopping you around. And if that happened, you would never hear that publicly. That kind of stuff happens all the time, and it's never leaked because that destroys it if it's leaked. That's how this is how the Davis and the Lakers and the Pelicans screwed up. It got leaked. So they could have done a deal with the Lakers. They shut their mouths.
Like there's a game being played here, and it's an interesting one. But like, if someone's going to trade everything for Bradley Beal, it's going to be because the GM who's trying to get Bradley Beal goes to his owner with that article where they say Bradley Beal's not available, right? Like you can't get him for love or money. And then you say, okay, that is the precursor. So if anything else leaks, if there's any hint of like, oh, they would trade him to the, or, there's a little something in the air, then the price is half, right? This is the article that makes it just like, oh, he's not going to the prom with you. Like, no way. That's how this goes, right?
Like, again, as I wrote on True Hoop, that the Warriors are so interesting because they have the draft capital, they have the young players, and they have a lot of salaries that can make it work. And you have the just want to win a championship with Stephen Curry. And they might look at this season just like the Wizards or just like the Celtics could and just say, this year's a wash. Let's just build for next year when Klay Thompson is here. Or they could say, Bradley Beal is like, we're on his list. I'm not saying he is on the list or he's made a list, but let's say if Bradley Beal reaches out to Steph Curry and says, could we make a deal right now? I would want to play with you. I want to play with you tomorrow. Then this all changes because the Golden State Warriors, unlike the Clippers, they have the assets to make a Bradley Beal deal happen.
Sure. But I wrote that for us, Henry, before the draft. Like, that was the one deal. If I'm the Warriors, because I loved Weissman for them, that was the one deal where I just felt like you had to consider it because Beal's that good, and he fits in perfectly with Steph and Klay and Dre. He's a real plug and play all-star, real plug that can play with those other guys. Not everyone is. Like James Harden isn't the best fit with Steph Curry. He's better than Bradley Beal. Beal's a better fit for that team.
Yeah, Devin in the chat asked, but would you rather have a backcourt of Steph and Beal or Steph and Klay? I don't think it's an either or. Nope. I think it's you have them both. You can throw in the Wiggins contract, Wiseman, the pick. I'm not saying you put in all three of those things into the deal for Bradley Beal, but you don't have to put in Klay Thompson into that.
No.
The player known as the Wiggins contract.
And we do this thing with Wiggs. Like every week he's like, wait, you know what? That guy, they call him, what was it? Scotty Wiggins, as in like Scotty Pippen Wiggins or something like that. And it's like, so first he's Maple Jordan. Okay. Right. And now he's Pippen Wiggins. And I'm like, man, we have these are unfair comparisons for poor Andrew Wiggins. Is either
Greg put in our chat. I watched it. Yeah, he had 40 the other night, and he's become a very good defender for the first time in his career. This is, like I said, he had been with Golden State from day one. he'd be an all-star in my opinion. He had everything going for him. He's starting to play fast for the first time, like really used his speed. Oubre's playing better. They're just really beat up. They've had some bad luck.
We should talk about Rookie of the Year. So LaMelo was probably going to win it, and now maybe there's a little more competition. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I think he still wins it because he was that spectacular when he was playing. 41 games out of 72 for the season. That's about 57% of your games. That's just below the threshold of what we've seen from a Rookie of the Year in the past. Patrick Ewing, I think, had 60% of his games, and he still won Rookie of the Year.
Are these numbers coming from your head, or do you have these written down?
Oh, no, I just did some research, or I saw it online. Yeah.
I like to think you just did the math on the fly.
You know what? I didn't tell you. I talked to Aaron Gordon's doctor who cloned Aaron Gordon, and I have a Tom Haberstroh sitting right here who's got these notes while I'm on Twitter. So I think last year when you had Zion Williamson and Ja Morant, it was like, man, Zion Williamson, could he win Rookie of the Year with only 20 games? No, because there's Ja Morant, right? This year, is there a Ja Morant that could blow, all the LaMelo Ball stats out of the water? No, I don't think there is. There's some good candidates like Anthony Edwards.
There's two candidates.
Tyrese Halliburton. I think those are guys who.
David's got another one though. David's got one more.
There's only two candidates as I see it. For sure, Anthony Edwards. Let's face it. If Edwards scores 30 points twice a week the rest of the season, which is possible, they might lose every one of those games, by the way. Yeah, he's going to win it. He's going to win it because he's going to have 70 games of great numbers. But I think Emmanuel Quickly is the only other one because it's the Knicks. And he's good. He's the highest rated player in terms of metrics of all rookies. He's scored 15 a game this month. So it's just, 10 games, whatever so far. But he's playing pretty well. He doesn't defend great. One day he needs to, and he's quick enough to do it. But I think the Knicks surge, Tom, I didn't look where they are in the standings now. But they're a legit playoff contender, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like top six even, potentially.
I just think when Derrick Rose comes back, I think he's probably going to lose a little bit of time or usage.
Probably.
And that, Quickly, Edwards, and Halliburton, probably the three most likely candidates to unseat LaMelo Ball. Any of those have to continue balling out in order to do that. It's a lot of ball, LaMelo Ball balling out. This is weird.
Edwards, I watched him. He's got all the superstar kind of talents and quality that LaMelo has. Neither of them guard anybody. It's hard for rookies. It's not like they're not trying. It's just really hard to play defense as a rookie. There's a lot going on, and the other team's really good. The other players are really good. But Edwards is a feast for the eyes on the court. My goodness. He's a train wreck like most rookies are, but it's exciting to watch him wreck. And when he's not wrecking, he's extraordinary. He's like Derrick Rose was in the league as a rookie, and he looked like LeBron his first couple of years in terms of for position. It looked like he was a power forward going against guys. He was so strong and explosive. So what Edwards looks like as a two. He's just a train.
19. Crazy.
And I think I'm going to accuse the future Rookie of the Year voters of recency bias that they haven't had yet. But I think that probably somebody's going to have a 50-point game near the vote time, and that person would rocket up to the top of the list for me, right? Like it might not happen, but if somebody goes bananas, if the Knicks are, getting a really good record coming into the playoffs and quickly is playing well, or if Anthony Edwards, he might have a 50-point game. Like it could happen. Near vote time, these kind of accomplishments will weigh huge.
It's a great point.
This is where I think LaMelo is at a disadvantage because he won't be, front of mind.
Was it his right wrist? I don't remember.
LaMelo's shooting him. Yeah.
It's right wrist. Yeah, that's a delicate. I've dealt with that before with a player.
Yeah.
That's just we need him to slow down and make sure. I guess they're getting a second opinion, super smart. And it's not even just a second opinion of whether it's a fracture. You should be able to see the fracture on an X-ray. It's what to do with it. It's important.
I've watched a lot of bad things happen to players on the court this year.
Yeah.
Where they don't go back to the locker room. And like he did break his wrist and got a little manipulation on the sideline, and they put like a rubber band around it and sent him back out there, right? Like What like that's a little crazy.
But I've seen that. Kevin Martin broke his left wrist. He scored 48 against Memphis. Broke it in the first half and still had 48. And then they found out I got the text. I was shocked to know because I just saw him score 48 points, many of them in the second half. And then years later, he broke the same bone, same spot, right wrist in New York. Carmelo, Iverson might have come the first time. Carmelo did the second time, broke his right wrist, and he had like 38 in that game or 39. Many of them after the injury, but it felt funky, which tells me maybe LaMelo, because LaMelo felt pain right away, didn't he, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think he may have just broken a different bone. And so, because where Kevin broke his, you could still shoot, but it ballooned up really bad.
He's basically playing one-handed after that.
Yeah.
A broken wrist is like 12 different injuries, right? There's like all these different little bones in there. It depends which one you broke, but I feel like Robert Covington wears a mask now because he took an unbelievable shot to the face, and his whole head's like dog, and he's like running around like in mega pain. Right back in the game, like where the fuck is the concussion protocol? Like it doesn't exist anymore. Like I just feel like take these players to the locker room, like do an X-ray, right? Like lose a quarter. Who gives a shit, right? Like it's so weird to me to have like LaMelo out there with a rubber band on his wrist. Like what are we doing? I
was thinking is because of the protocols this season, like their social interaction this season is the games.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like the games are just so much more valuable to the players now because it's the only way that they can kind of have fun, right? Unless they're in their room playing video games, right? So the whole idea of, Draymond Green's talked about this a whole bunch is just like, our only time to be hanging out with teammates is like during the games. So I can imagine if you're LaMelo Ball and this is the only time when you can be like with your teammates, like you're going to want to be out there. I'm not blaming the protocol for him. Yeah.
Playing through Speaking of LaMelo Ball and balls, let's talk about Lonzo. Why are the Pelicans, why does it seem like they're so determined to move him when they've shifted their team to a Zion-based attack off the dribble offense? And he's become a 40% plus three-point shooter. He's not been the defender he's been in years past, but we know he can defend. He's still solid. And when you don't want the offense to run around Zion's ball handling ability, he's a legit point guard who's very good at passing the ball to score like Zion. Why are they rushing to get rid of him? Or maybe it's just smokescreen.
The only thing that I can think of is that they don't trust his medicals. For whatever reason, they just don't want to commit to that kind of money long-term to Lonzo Ball. I have no inside information on that, but that's the only thing I can think of is that they know something about him and his projection long-term that would make trading him away seem like a smart bet. But I think you're right. I love Lonzo Ball's game. I think he'd be a great fit next to Zion Williamson, but the only thing I can think of is that they don't value him nearly as much as that extension coming this summer. Other teams might.
I wonder if they lost him when they got Stan. Right? I wonder if there was some rumblings. What's that?
He's playing the best he's ever played.
I know, but did you see what LeVar said?
No.
LeVar's like, Henry. He hates it on the Pelicans. Like he's done here. Like wants to move on. Blah blah blah. So we can talk about that as a separate thing. But if he doesn't like it, he doesn't like it. I doubt he secretly likes it.
Let's hear from him. They're their own people, Henry. They don't have to listen to, we don't have to take daddy's word for it when if Lonzo Ball wants to be traded, let's hear from him.
Well,
hey, Gerard.
They do have that dad though, right? There he is.
I loved Lonzo coming out of school. I loved him at UCLA. I thought this guy, I didn't know I thought he was another guy, just like his brother, I compared to Jason Kidd. It's unfair to compare these guys to Jason Kidd, who I saw first in high school when he was like 17. But Lonzo had that kind of game where he could be your quarterback on both sides and had unlike his brother, Lonzo isn't selfish at all. So he's the perfect guy with Zion and Brandon Ingram, who's fucking terrific. I love him next to those guys. If he doesn't like it, he doesn't like it. But it's too bad because I think Hedo Turkoglu ran away from Orlando right when he found a coach that best could get the most out of him. He was leading the NBA in fourth quarter scoring, and they lost to the Lakers in 5 games in the finals. I think 3 of those games in overtime. They were right there with Dwight Howard and Courtney Lee, and Hedo left. and never found somebody to use him the way Stan did. Lonzo's looking great.
Joe Johnson of Phoenix, same thing.
Yeah. Hey, Gerard.
Hi, Gerard.
Gerard.
Hello.
Perfect timing. We want to talk James Harden before we leave. Did you watch yesterday?
Yeah.
He's a joke of a joke. He's a joke inside of a joke, isn't he? He and LeBron play three-dimensional chess like nobody else.
Wait, did we get another clone here? He's a joke inside of a joke?
I'm just saying, there's guys that play three-dimensional chess, but they can't score the way that Harden and LeBron can score. So it's harder to do it. You still are plotting and all of that. Harden always can score, but there were 2 or 3 times yesterday, Gerard, where I just knew, having watched him shoot thousands of times in his career, where he was going to shoot it, and then whoop, he whips a pass. Of course, they're wide open everywhere. And I'm almost like, why'd you pass it? You could have scored, but he's just making sure other people are eating. He's incredible.
He, of course, to your point, Coach, he sees the game, right? As you said, three-dimensional. He is like, LeBron and Chris Paul and these guys have the ultimate computer brain, right? Like
computer brain, right?
All the angles, I know where everybody's going.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really cool about him when you watch him play, particularly when he's heading towards the rim, defenders often have a tough time gauging, is this a pass or is this a floater? Because it looks exactly the same. There is no, you just don't know. And so you got bigs that are kind of like hedging back because they don't want to get dunked on. And then it's like, whoop, it just goes over their head and it's a layup. And, he is, it's easy to say, but he's a multiplier, right? And so we saw what he did on Houston. And I think that's part of the problem, right? Everyone watched the Houston Rockets play ball, and they're like, man, all he does is ISO and fucking dribble 800 times and then 2 step backs and whatever. And it's like, well, the personnel and the coaching staff, that was what they said was the best way to win. Well, on a team where you got Kyrie Irving and all these other ridiculously good players, you don't got to do that shit, right? Like now it's like, ooh, I can do all this other fun stuff and unlock my game. And he's led the league in assists before. Like he's always been excellent playmaker.
Yes, for
it's
sure.
just that's not what it was called for in Houston. And so, it's every
Well, he also, in fairness, he left the Thunder because he didn't want to play the role he's now playing in Brooklyn.
Well, no doubt.
Like, I need the goddamn ball all
But
game.
I think that's also a 24-year-old versus now a 30-year-old.
I agree.
For sure.
So
He wanted to see.
I want MVPs. I'm good.
He wanted to see if he could be the best player in the world. He found that pretty close. And now he wants to try to win and everything else. And by the way, have we seen what Houston's done since Harden left?
Lost 20 in a row. They're terrible.
I just want to, Blake Griffin dunked, which matters here
I watched
because
him live.
it made me think about PJ Tucker. So is PJ Tucker going to have a revival from team changing like Blake Griffin just had? And it made me think about a coach, a former Rockets coach, told me when they still had James Harden, they'd lost Daryl Morey and Mike D'Antoni. When this dude said to me, and it was like the little subhead of the story was they might be the worst team in the league. And everybody was like, what?
Yeah.
And of course they had injuries and it was dumb luck, but like I just looked during the course of the show. They're like 2 games from being the worst team in the league. Like it was a prescient quote.
Gerard, curious real quick. What are your thoughts on Blake last night?
I think Blake's another one, right? Where it's like, we're used to seeing him on the Clippers and dunking and doing all this all NBA shit. Like, I think we often forget, like, these are pretty smart basketball players and know how to play the game. And when they don't have to be the man or no longer capable of being the man, you see other parts of their game that matter, right? He's a good defender. So much value, and Coach, this, is being placed on, do I know where I'm supposed to be?
He knows how to play. Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things with rookies, right? You're like, holy shit, what are you doing? Yeah. Blake knows where he's supposed to be all the time on both sides of the floor. That has so much value when you're playing with these other good guys. He knows how to pass the ball. Like, he knows how to read sets. Like, those things matter. And on a team,
to your point, David Thorpe doesn't curse very much, but his. Can I tell the story, David? Do you want to tell the story of like?
No, you tell the story, but I cuss all the time.
Yeah, what are you talking about? It's the biggest lie you ever told.
Well, when I first met him, he didn't drink or cuss very much. Both those things have changed.
The drinking part. What happened? What story are you going to tell? I didn't know.
You were saying so. David's son is on Florida State and the tournament's on. And so David's wife is talking to his daughter and he's like, oh yeah, he's watching college basketball. He's just cursing the whole time. Because what you said,
guys don't know shit.
Running into each other.
They don't know what they're doing. Blake, you're right. Blake knows how to get out of the way. That dunk looked great. I don't know if he'll do it again. It was a very athletic, explosive dunk. But yeah, he won't make them worse. I don't know how much he'll play come postseason, but Harden alone, I love how Gerard put it. He's a force multiplier like so few players are. Chris Paul was last year for OKC. He's brilliant. It's just people need to watch him before he's done playing because he's just incredible.
I thought he looked great last night.
We talked about trade deadlines and who's adding whom. I mean, let's not forget Brooklyn adds Kevin Durant back at some point.
Yeah.
Like, so that could be the ultimate, like, oh, that's our trade deadline piece. We're good.
Right.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you next time. It's legal time.
Okay.
Thank you.
She's back.
Thank you.